How do you turn the tide of war in one of history's harshest and most unforgiving battlefields? Enter General George S. Patton, the fiery, relentless American commander, and Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the cunning desert fox of Nazi Germany. The deserts of North Africa became their battleground, where their wits, weapons and willpower collided in a series of battles that would define the future of World War II. This wasn't just a struggle for land, it was a high-stakes fight for control of the Mediterranean, vital supply routes, and the future of Europe. The outcome would set the stage for the eventual Allied invasion of Sicily and Italy. But first, the Allies had to take North Africa, and for that, they needed a leader who could turn disaster into victory. Welcome to the shadows and the past, where history meets mystery and the past is your present. Hit the like and subscribe to join us as we delve into a world where bold tactics and daring maneuvers are the difference between survival and demise. By late 1942, the Axis powers had solidified their position across much of North Africa. For years, Rommel's Afrika Korps had delivered devastating blows to the British Eighth Army, outmaneuvering them in legendary battles like Gazala and Tobruk. Rommel's genius was evident in his ability to strike fast and withdraw before his enemies could react. His forces seemed unstoppable, rolling through the desert with deadly precision. Yet, while the Axis maintained control of North Africa, they were stretched thin. Rommel was operating on a logistical razor's edge. His forces were often short on supplies, particularly fuel, and reliant on tenuous supply lines across the Mediterranean. Still, Rommel's ability to adapt and his tactical brilliance kept his forces fighting long after others would have faltered. Rommel's style of warfare was revolutionary. He mastered the art of the blitzkrieg, a fast-paced, aggressive style of fighting that relied on speed, surprise, and decisive strikes. His forces relied on the Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks, which, though not the heaviest of the German arsenal, were mobile and packed enough firepower to dominate the British Crusader and Valentine tanks. The Panzer III, armed with a 50mm gun, was perfect for engaging both infantry and enemy armor, while the Panzer IV, with its longer 75mm gun, became the backbone of Rommel's tank forces. But Rommel's real secret weapon was the 88mm flak gun, originally designed as an anti-aircraft weapon. It could knock out enemy tanks at long distances with frightening accuracy, and Rommel employed it to deadly effect. In the wide open spaces of the desert, these guns turned battlefields into kill zones, making it nearly impossible for Allied tanks to approach without being decimated from afar. Rommel also mastered the use of combined arms tactics, integrating infantry, artillery, and air power to devastating effect. His Luftwaffe Stuka dive bombers were a constant threat, softening up enemy positions before his tanks struck. These highly mobile forces allowed Rommel to strike swiftly and retreat just as quickly, keeping his enemies off balance and playing to his advantage in the vast open desert. By November 1942, the tide began to shift. The Allies launched Operation Torch, an ambitious amphibious assault aimed at securing North Africa from the west, while the British Eighth Army advanced from the east after their victory at El Alamein. This marked the United States' first major involvement in the European theater of war, but they were stepping into a brutal learning ground. The American forces were inexperienced in desert warfare, and their first real test would be a trial by fire. It was here, in the chaotic and unforgiving sands of Tunisia, that Patton would make his mark. But before he could lead his men to victory, he had to rebuild them from a devastating defeat at Kasserine Pass. In February 1943, the Battle of Kasserine Pass was a humiliating defeat for the Allies. Rommel's forces, using their mastery of the terrain and superior tactical positioning, obliterated the American lines, killing, wounding, or capturing over 6,000 US soldiers. The inexperience of the Americans was laid bare as Rommel's tanks tore through their defenses with terrifying ease. The loss at Kasserine Pass was a wake-up call. The Americans needed someone who could take command, rebuild morale, and turn a shattered army into an effective fighting force. That man was General George S. Patton. Patton arrived in North Africa in March 1943, determined to whip the demoralized US II Corps into shape. His leadership style was as aggressive as his battlefield tactics. Patton enforced strict discipline, ordering troops to shave daily, maintain spotless uniforms, and carry themselves with pride. For Patton, discipline was about more than appearance. It was a reflection of a soldier's readiness to fight. Patton's reputation for being hard on his men is legendary. He was relentless in drilling his soldiers, preparing them for the rigors of desert warfare. He instilled in them a sense of pride, aggression, and, most importantly, confidence. The message was clear. They were not there to sit back and defend. They were there to attack and win. Patton understood the value of speed and mobility, much like Rommel. He revamped US tactics to mirror those of his German adversary, emphasizing fast, decisive movements and combined arms tactics. His forces would strike hard and keep moving, giving the enemy no time to regroup. Patton's forces were equipped with the M4 Sherman tank, a reliable, fast-moving workhorse of the US military. While not as heavily armored or armed as the German panzers, the Sherman tanks had a major advantage: mobility. In the vast desert, where maneuverability was often more important than sheer firepower, the Sherman could outflank and outmaneuver Rommel's tanks, turning the tables on the Afrika Korps. Patton also relied heavily on artillery, using the M101 105mm howitzer to rain down fire on enemy positions. His M3 anti-tank guns were strategically placed to funnel enemy tanks into kill zones, where they could be picked off by artillery and tank destroyers. In addition, Patton's forces employed mines to slow the German advance and create defensive barriers that Rommel's tanks struggled to overcome. And just as Rommel had his Stukas, Patton had P-40 Warhawk fighter bombers, which played a vital role in providing close air support. These fast, agile planes could swoop down on enemy formations, bombing and strafing German positions with deadly precision. In the air, the Warhawks helped neutralize Rommel's advantage, ensuring Patton could engage on more even terms. The Battle of El Guettar, fought on March 23, 1943, became the proving ground for Patton's newly trained forces. Rommel, sensing an opportunity to smash the Americans once and for all, launched a major tank assault, sending over 140 German tanks charging toward the American lines. It was a test of strength between the US II Corps, still licking its wounds from Kasserine Pass, and Rommel's battle-hardened Afrika Korps. Patton, however, was prepared. He had set a brilliant defensive trap, using a combination of anti-tank mines, artillery, and Sherman tanks to stall the German advance. As Rommel's tanks hit the minefields, they were funneled into narrow kill zones, where Patton's artillery opened up with devastating effect. The German tanks were caught in a deadly crossfire, unable to advance or retreat without being targeted. The Shermans, though outgunned in direct tank-to-tank combat, used their superior speed to outflank the German panzers, hitting them from the sides and rear. Patton's forces worked like a well-oiled machine, executing the plan with precision and ferocity. By the end of the day, Rommel's forces were in retreat, having suffered heavy losses. The victory at El Guettar was more than just a tactical success. It was a turning point. For the first time, American forces had faced the Afrika Korps head-on and won. Patton had proven that his men, under his aggressive leadership, could take on the best the Germans had to offer and emerge victorious. Though they never met face-to-face, the rivalry between Patton and Rommel was legendary. Both were larger-than-life figures, men who thrived on the battlefield and led with an iron fist. While Rommel was admired for his tactical genius and mobility, Patton was feared for his relentless aggression and iron will. Both men respected each other, even studying each other's tactics. Patton famously carried a copy of Rommel's own book, Infantry Attacks, which detailed the German general's innovative use of tanks and infantry during World War I. Patton studied Rommel's methods and learned from them, incorporating many of the Desert Fox's own tactics into his campaigns. Rommel, for his part, knew that Patton was not a typical commander. He respected Patton's ability to turn an inexperienced, demoralized force into a deadly fighting machine. And Rommel understood that with Patton in command, the battle for North Africa had become far more dangerous for the Axis powers. The battle for North Africa continued for several months after Guettar, but the momentum had shifted. By May 1943, the Axis forces were in full retreat, and the Allies had secured North Africa. Patton's success in the desert paved the way for his future campaigns in Sicily, Normandy, and beyond, where his aggressive tactics would continue to win decisive victories. Rommel, too, would go on to fight in France, tasked with defending the Atlantic Wall against the impending Allied invasion. His respect for Patton only grew as he realized that the American general embodied the very traits that made Rommel so successful: boldness, adaptability, and a refusal to back down. The battle between George S. Patton and Erwin Rommel in North Africa wasn't just a clash of military tactics. It was a clash of wills, strategies, and leadership styles. Both men were icons of their respective nations, and their confrontation in the desert shaped the future of World War II. Patton's victory at Guettar and his transformation of the US II Corps from a demoralized force into a highly effective fighting machine showcased his brilliance as a leader. Rommel, though eventually forced into retreat, remains one of the greatest military minds of the war, known for his tactical genius and ability to wage war in some of the most challenging conditions on Earth. Their duel in the desert left an indelible mark on military history, a testament to the power of leadership, strategy, and sheer determination. Ah, well, such is life in the shadows. If you'd like more secret stories of cunning, endurance, and iron resolve, hit the like and subscribe to ride along as we explore the secrets lurking in the shadows and echoing through the corridors of the past. And if tales like this one appeal to your rambling heart, click the link to get a first-hand account of iconic George Patton's impetuous introduction to campaigning through wild, rough terrain and thwarting cunning enemies at fast, close range. Welcome to the shadows and the past, where history meets mystery, and the past is your present.